Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of What We Do in the Shadows, Hybrid Creatures. And I overall enjoyed this episode, but mainly for Guillermo and Laszlo's story, and to a certain extent Nandor and Collins. Nadja's was just back to its old kind of status quo that we've had this season of dealing with the Hex, and it's the weakest of the three stories. Because, granted, there's two competing ones in this one, Guillermo and Laszlo's, and actually Nadja's that somehow wrote in Nandor and Colin. But the thing is, she then essentially goes off on a side quest kind of route. Nandor and Colin Robinson do their own kind of thing with pretty much the remnants of her story. It was actually kind of strange, but Guillermo and Laszlo's really is the best bit. So we're going to go with that one, because that's where we start off. We see that Laszlo, I love the pairing of Laszlo and Guillermo trying to figure this shit out. So he's running him through experiments, having him drink all kinds of different kind of stuff. He's like, oh, no, messed up the beakers. That one was urine. I need another urine sample, as he runs off to throw up. But I then see that he's going through and doing all this stuff. He's been in the lab for 3 days. He essentially then comes out and is like, Guillermo, my boy, oh, Gizmo, my boy, you fucked. And he's like, what, you can't figure out? Because he's using all these different kind of animals and combining them with Guillermo's DNA to try and isolate why he is stuck in the perpetual kind of twilight kind of zone of being a vampire but not. And we see that he's actually kind of getting a little bit better. He's crawling up on walls. He's able to transform into a kind of fucked up kind of bat, kind of similar to the woman that Nadja turned previously. Not to that kind of, she was more human bat kind of thing going on, but Guillermo can kind of get kind of smaller and kind of puts around the room and everything. But then after saying that he's fucked, he's like, oh no, we could probably figure that out, but I've got these fucking things that I've got to kill or get rid of, and throws it on Guillermo. And we see that, oh my god, it's so fucked up. He has created hybrid fucking creatures. Now granted, great title. We actually get that of Guillermo's DNA with a dog, a pig, a sheep, a rat. We've of course got the frogs, and a koi fish, as we learn later on in the episode. He's like, we gotta get rid of this before Nandor sees this shit, so you kill it and kill them all. Here's a gun, do the do. He's like, alright, he's kind of thinking, I don't really kind of want to do this, but then we learn that they can speak, and the dog is the one that is the most articulate, being like, there's this prophecy that Daddy Guillermo would save us and everything, and Guillermo's just like, oh god. And I loved it when he was able to talk at first, and he's like, oh, I didn't say anything because and then Guillermo faints, and then the most fucked up thing happens is that the rat mouse one or whatnot starts humping his head as he's passed out. It just happens so fast, and then it cuts to the commercial kind of break, and it's just like, what the fuck? And Guillermo's like, shit, what's going on here? And then we learned that the pig made an oopsie, and that it is burning a hole through the floor, and Guillermo's like, what the fuck? So he's then trying to figure out stuff. They're like, alright, you gotta kind of go check on the fish one, and he goes out, and we see that Laszlo's of course pruning the vagina bushes, and Guillermo's trying to get kind of stuff so that we can get the fish one. He's like, yeah, Gizmo, my boy, what are you doing in there? That's my wanking shed. It's like, yeah, it's like, are you wanking in there? It's just funny that, yes, Laszlo would, of course, have, a wanking shit. And he's like, alright, get out. I want to wank. And then he's able to get the fish one. He's like, what's wanking? And it's like, oh, God, alright. So he pretty much sets it up. And he's like, alright, I am going to help you guys. And we're going to do this thing. And he pretty much goes out, pretty much makes it look like he's going to kill them. And Laszlo's like, alright, go, I'll do this. And then he just kind of wanders off and lets Guillermo then shoots into the sky. And one of the kind of funniest bits is that I love that he is attempting to save these creatures' lives, and then in the process accidentally kills 4 fucking birds. He just fired them up at this guy, and they just kind of fell down. And it Also, the dog one, for some reason, is like, yeah, if you save us, I'll let you lie with my daughter. And it's just a regular dog. It looks at the camera like, I didn't even sign up for that fucking shit. It's funny, like, I know it's hard to, like, direct animals and stuff, but, like, even the dog's like, what? I just love that they were able to get that kind of reaction out of the dog. It's just like, all right, I'm just here doing my due. But then he gets them all except for the fish. The fish kind of has to have a specialized kind of place, so he's able to then kind of keep it in there. Laszlo's checking in on him. He's like, what are you doing out there? He's like, I'm wanking, as he's just then talking to the fish. He takes the rest of the hybrid creatures, and interestingly enough, I'm like, all right, how is he going to kind of like help these things? I hope he doesn't like put them in a carnival, freak show, anything like that. Granted, they kind of actually would have worked out in Nadja's bar, thinking about it as kind of servers or whatnot. Granted, more of the dog, because that one seems to be the most articulate and intelligent at the moment, whereas the pig one seemed kind of more kind of childish, same kind of with the sheep one. So he essentially just puts them in a old folks retirement home as emotional support animals, and I'm like, not bad. It gives the people people to talk to, people to interact with, and as long as people don't look too closely or try and figure out what the fuck's going on with like this kind of hybrid animal creature that's got your hair and fucking kind of looks like you, it's kind of like the best kind of solution that he could have come up with, and I'm glad that he didn't kill them or go kind of bloodthirsty or try and like fuck them over, because he has gotten some unfortunate traits from the housemates and everything of being kind of more callous and trying to help himself out at the expense of others. And I did like seeing him being more of the Guillermo that we have seen throughout the series of being like, okay, this is a fucked up situation. I understand we're trying to figure out why I'm not a full vampire yet, and I know this is a side effect of trying to figure that shit out, but these creatures deserve to live. And he's able to find a scenario where that actually works out for him. I'm like, yeah, good on you, Guillermo. So that was kind of the best one of just seeing him and Laszlo kind of interact with this kind of fucked up situation and how to kind of figure out with it. Nadja's is continuing with the whole hex thing. We also don't get a check-in with the guide or the doll. The doll's been a little bit, but I only bring that up because the doll Nadja is my favorite Nadja at this point, because they just worm her down to just, oh, I gotta deal with this stuff with the hex. So she takes the people from her homeland and just essentially tries to teach them certain stuff about America, which is interesting, seeing how she kind of picks up stuff on like American culture, but the way she's like explaining it is completely nuts. Her trying to explain Thanksgiving was like kind of the best part for her kind of thing, and her doing like all the different kind of stuff with explaining American culture, like, oh yeah, you're driving, and how like in New York the person would be like, hey, fuck you, I'm walking here kind of shit. But then we see that Nandor and Colin are also in the class, mainly because she wanted them to be there so that way it wouldn't feel like the class is empty. Nandor's like, what the fuck is she talking about? She's not even getting into history and stuff. And it's cool that like Nandor is like a history buff and wants to kind of get into that kind of stuff. And his is an interesting one because we kind of get some of his backstory in this episode of how he kind of came to America and all that. So that was kind of cool to see. But she then gets carted off. She's like, I think I'm kind of failing these people and that I'm not a good teacher, explaining that she has a troubled kind of past with school because she was the kind of weird kid in the class, and they made her go outside and she burned down the school. And then she's thinking maybe the hex is kind of a little bit something about on that. And then she's kind of cursing the hex, and then this woman's like, oh, I'm Helen, the magic woman. Give me all this shit, and like pretty much having her go on Dunkin' runs. It's really fucking weird. And she's got a specific Dunkin' donuts that Nadja has to go to get certain things, and then Nadja's not stupid. Now, granted, she brings up that she's not really that into magic and that she doesn't really fuck around with it, but if it'll help with the hex, she's going to kind of go with it. She doesn't vet this woman at all, and then just keeps going on this Dunkin' kind of stuff before going to the Dunkin' Donuts, seeing that she's banned in this one place, brings it up to her, she's like, that was a place that I felt like home. And then she just hypnotizes the Dunkin' workers to let her just like eat stuff because she kind of felt for, because she understands what it's like to like lose that kind of home place, which I kind of get, but it was just not well executed for me. It didn't seem like Nadja, and it seemed like we had to engineer a scenario where she was stupid and wouldn't pick up on this kind of stuff. Now, granted, if it would feed more into certain kind of insecurities for her, and granted, I can understand that you could pretty much say that that was with the whole hex kind of thing, but she really didn't explain the process of removing the hex or anything like that. It was like the kind of bare minimum, and she kind of would have picked up on that, especially with how she was dealing with certain kind of stuff in the previous episode of her being back on track of the Nadja that we kind of know. So this was the weakest thing for me. The thing that kind of saved it was that when she left, she put Nandor and Colin in charge of the class, and then we've got the two competing philosophies of teaching. Nandor tried to teach history and stuff, and essentially making his country's history zero, the start of civilization kind of stuff, and Colin trying to be like the cool teacher for the greatest strain, pretty much sitting on the desk like cross-legged in shorts to pretty much show his nuts, trying to be like with the lingo and everything, doing like the whole quad stuff. Nandor kind of gets fed up with me, like, that's it, we're going to the museum. And they go to the museum, but then we see that like there's a lot of Nandor's shit there, and I really think that this should have taken up the second story of the episode, because there's so much potential with this. Like, I want to know how the fuck they got Nandor's shit, because this is my shit, why the fuck is this here? And I'm like, yes, can we explore this? Because they've got his underwear, they got his clothes, they got his amulet, which is actually a keychain his mom gave him. And then it even explains in details like his history of his place. Oh yeah, they would wear this amulet because of the superstition of going across deep water and shit like that. And all the kind of background about like his erotic novel, which is like, oh yeah, this dude about sky fucking. Yeah, this dude was probably a virgin. And it's like, holy shit, Nandor's just like, oh my god! And he's just pissed off at it, kind of goes away, but then Colin does a really nice thing of like changing the whole display and making him like a chick magnet, banging stuff like decked out in USA shit. And we see this kid even like reading it as like Colin is videotaping it on his phone, and then showing it to Nandor. Like, thanks, that really means a lot to me. And then Colin's like, well, this is awkward, and then kind of bugs off. But I like that because we learn more about like Nandor's backstory, about a museum actually having a display with his shit in it. Like, they should have fucking really went in on that. Like, the Nadja Hex thing doesn't feel like it really has any kind of definitive endpoint, and just really doesn't. It just had, it's something in the background that they can have, and they can just pull out and be like, Nadja, do this. It's like, there's a lot of other kind of better things that you can have Nadja do. This really deserved more exploration, more depth to be done, because the Nadja thing was not executed well for me. And if it worked for you, I'm glad. I don't want to take that from you. It's just, I don't see what they're doing with their character and their story at this point. And I'm like, come on. We've seen her have better stuff before. And I just really think that they had better potential, that even what they executed on here for Nandor and Colin really would have been cool. I would have taken a whole episode of seeing them fighting over teaching styles and whatnot, and maybe Nandor having his own class and Colin having his class, and just fucking around, and then having to see Guillermo have to like wrangle this whole thing to make sure it doesn't completely and utterly spin out of control. There's a lot of kind of cool things that they could have done with this. Though granted, I don't want to lose the Guillermo and Laszlo stuff that we've got, because I actually have liked that pairing. It's almost like they took the good lesson from Laszlo and Colin and be like, let's kind of see what happens with Laszlo and Guillermo. And I really like seeing them interact and what kind of insane shit can happen with their characters in with this kind of story that they're going on, especially exploring Guillermo not completely turning into a vampire. It just has been providing the best kind of situation so far. So we'll kind of see what happens. We've got, this was episode 7. it goes to 10 episodes. We'll see what the next couple episodes work out for. I'm looking forward more to like seeing what Guillermo and Laszlo kind of get up to, how the other kind of characters get pulled into it, and hopefully at least it rises to levels of the last episode and also the storyline that they had here with Guillermo and Laszlo. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.